Hey food fans, welcome back to another episode of Then We Eat. In today's episode, we'll be making shepherd's pie. It's actually cottage pie because we're going to be using ground beef instead of lamb. Let's get started. We're going to start by prepping our potatoes. We're going to peel 2 pounds of potatoes. I've already got some of them peeled already. Now that our potatoes are peeled, we're going to cut them into cubes so that we can boil them. You want them about 1 inch to 1.5 inches. Mine are a little bit bigger than 1.5 inches. Now we're going to put them in the pot of water to boil. Here's our pot. I've already got some water in it, ready to go. And we'll just dump our potatoes in. Well, off to the stove we go to get them to boil. And now we'll prep the rest of the ingredients that we need. We're going to use a cup of onion, some carrots, some jalapenos. So we'll get chopping those to start. Peel our onion. Get that outer skin off of there. We don't need that. The easiest way to cut the onion, I find, is if you start with your whole onion. Put some slices down the one side. Turn it 90 degrees and put some slices down the other side. You're not going all the way through the onion, you're just going halfway down, or however much onion you need. And now you can start slicing. You've got a nice dice here. That's about enough onion. Now I'm going to do 1/2 cup of carrot. Cut in slices between 1/4 and 1/2 inch thick. You want them so that they're not going to break apart when you start to cook them. Watch you don't cut your fingers. Yep, that's about enough on carrot. Next, we're going to add some jalapenos. And cut them open. I'm going to take all the seeds out because that's where the heat is. If you like the heat, you can leave the seeds in. We'll start with 2. We'll see where we end up. Remember, when you're working with jalapenos, don't touch your eyes or your face. Make sure you wash your hands very well after you're done. So these are going to get a smaller chop than the other stuff. We don't want to bite into a big, huge piece of jalapeno. You just want a little bit of flavor. And there's our jalapeno. A couple of larger chunks there. I'm just going to wash my hands. We'll be right back. Okay, we're back. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to measure out my spices. I have 2 tablespoons of parsley here, fresh from the garden. If you're using dry, you would use 2 teaspoons instead of 2 tablespoons. To that, I'm going to add 1 teaspoon of thyme, dried thyme, 1 teaspoon of dried rosemary, and I need 1/2 teaspoon each of the salt and pepper. We're just going to eyeball it. We can always add more salt and pepper to taste when it's finished cooking. That looks about good. And we'll add some pepper. About the same amount. All right, now we're ready to start cooking. We're gonna head over to the stove and we're gonna get started. Okay, we're back at the stove and we're ready to start cooking. We're gonna start with 2 tablespoons of olive oil to our pan. We'll turn our pan on to medium-low. Sorry, medium. Add 2 tablespoons of olive oil. And let that heat up for a few minutes. Once our oil is heated up, we're going to add the carrots and onions. And we're going to cook those for 3 to 4 minutes until the onions start to get translucent and the carrots start to cook a little bit. My oil may not have been hot enough to add this stuff to it. That's the sound you want to hear. Keep giving them a stir so they don't burn to the bottom of the pan. You want to make sure that the vegetables get nice and brown. You don't want them to burn. The onion's looking like it's getting nice and translucent. We'll just let the carrots cook for another minute or so and then we'll carry on with our next step. Almost there. Okay, to this we're going to add our ground beef and our spice mixture. We've got 1 pound of ground beef. We use regular ground beef, but you could use whatever kind you like. We like the fat in our meat, if you can get it open. In it goes. And our spice mixture, which was the parsley, the rosemary, the thyme, and the salt and pepper. In it goes as well. We're going to break up the ground beef a little bit and we're going to let it cook for 6 to 8 minutes until the beef is cooked through. A nice mix, get everything all incorporated into the pan. It smells really good. Okay, we're just going to let that cook for a couple more minutes till it gets nice and brown. And while we're doing that, we'll measure out the next ingredients. We need a cup of broth. Calls for beef broth. We only have chicken broth, so that's what we're going to use. So we'll measure out a cup of broth. Put that aside for a minute. Come back and we'll give our beef a little bit of a stir. Make sure it's not burning to the bottom of our pan. It's browning up nicely. We'll just let that go for another minute or 2. Almost there. Now to this, we're going to add 1 tablespoon of Worcestershire sauce and 2 cloves of garlic, which works out to about 2 teaspoons. I cheat. I use chopped garlic from the store. You can use fresh garlic, probably tastes better. And we'll give this a mix. Okay, it's looking pretty good. Now for the next step, I'm going to add a tablespoon of tomato puree, tomato paste, and 2 tablespoons of flour. Before we add the tomato paste, I forgot about our jalapenos. We're going to put those in now. So give those a quick stir. And now we'll add our tomato paste and our flour. So 1 tablespoon of tomato puree. And I already have 2 tablespoons measured of flour. So there's 2 tablespoons of flour, in it goes. And give that a stir around. This is going to thicken up your sauce. Make sure it's all nice and mixed in. We're going to cook for about a minute or so. Okay. Now that this is cooked up, now we're going to add our cup of chicken broth. Give that a quick mix. If anything was stuck to the bottom of your pan, you're going to deglaze it. I'm going to turn my heat down a little bit here. And now we're going to add our vegetables. So we're going to add a half a cup of frozen peas, about that much, yeah, maybe a little bit more, and a half a cup of frozen corn. I'm going to eyeball. I'm just going to throw that much in. We like a lot of corn in our shepherd's pie. We're going to break it all up and give it a stir. Well, I guess with the corn, we're going to wait for it to thaw a little bit before we break it up. We're going to let this cook for 6 to 8 minutes. I'm going to come back every so often, give it a stir. Make sure that everything's all broken up. The corn's still a little chunky in there. It'll thaw. We can give that all a mix. While this is cooking, I'm going to clean up a little bit so I have a little bit more room over here. A couple more minutes and we should be good. I have one last little addition before we're done, is I'm going to add a tablespoon of prepared yellow mustard. It gives it a little zangier of a flavor to it. Give that a mix. And we're almost there. I'm going to let that cook for about a minute more, and then we're going to turn it off and work on our potatoes. Oh, welcome back. Our meat's been cooking. It looks like it's just about there. I think we're going to call that done. And there's the meat mixture for our shepherd's pie. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to work on the potatoes. I'm going to take this off the burner and let it cool before it goes in our pan. Okay, our potatoes are cooked. Now I'm just going to drain them off. Okay, we've drained our potatoes. Now it's time to mash them. And to that, we're going to add a little bit of butter, cream, Parmesan cheese, and some powdered garlic. Then we're going to mash them up. I'm going to add between 1/2 and 1/4 cup of butter. Mine's still hard, which is all right because that means that the potatoes will melt it. And it goes. Or maybe we'll add a little tiny bit more. You can never go wrong with too much butter in your potatoes. We're going to add 1/2 cup of milk. And about 1/2 cup of Parmesan cheese. Well, I didn't have quite 1/2 cup. That was more like 1/4 cup. That's all I had. And a sprinkling of garlic powder. About 1/2 teaspoon. And now we mash. You're going to mash your potatoes to the consistency that you like. I still like a little tiny bit of chunks in it. Not a lot, but a little tiny bit of chunks in it. That way I know I'm still eating mashed potatoes and not pureed potatoes. I'm going to take my spatula and I'm just going to make sure that everything is all mixed up in here. All right, now we're going to assemble our shepherd's pie, cottage pie. Okay, now it's time to assemble our shepherd's pie. I've got a baking dish that I'm going to spray with cooking spray so it doesn't stick to the bottom. I'm going to do this over at the sink so that I don't get cooking spray all over everywhere. There we go. Now we're going to add our meat mixture. Be careful because it's still hot. Even it out into your pan. And to that, you're going to add your potatoes. Make sure that your potatoes are placed evenly on top so that you don't have one spot that's got 2 inches of potato and another spot that doesn't have any. Smooth it all out on the top. Make sure it's even. And then what I would like to do is I like to take a fork and run a fork along it. That just gives you some edges for it to brown up nicely. So you don't have a flat top that doesn't have anywhere for the brown goodness to go. And there you have it, a shepherd's pie. Now we're not eating this today. I've cooked this for later on in the week. But if you were going to eat it today, you would preheat your oven to 400 degrees. And once it comes up to temperature, you're going to cook it for 25 to 30 minutes until golden brown and cook through. I'm going to put mine in the freezer, freeze it. And when I'm ready to cook it, I'll take it out, thaw it, and we'll follow the same cooking instructions. 400 degrees for 25 to 30 minutes. And don't forget, first we cook, then we eat. If you like this YouTube video, hit subscribe, like, and leave a comment down below as to what you would like to cook, what you like to put in your shepherd's pie. Thanks for watching.